just the headlines of the draft here, and then we're going to get right to Cris Collinsworth so we can talk about some of the big issues of the draft. This draft obviously loaded at the top by the SEC, first pick and very last pick, and a whole bunch in between. SEC showed out, so did LSU, the national champ. 14 players off of one college team getting drafted. That ties Ohio State's mark, the decade plus, and they'll be talking about that for a long time. The 13 wide receivers that went early, the emphasis on the passing game. But with all the emphasis on the passing game, big needs in big-time teams. Green Bay and New England go unfulfilled, and let's talk about that and more as we bring in our colleague from Sunday Night Football, Cris Collinsworth. Cris, headline number one to me was what a job the NFL did. Easy to criticize. I mean, it's the big elephant that you can take a lot of shots at, takes those body blows and comes back. But it felt like the NFL did everything right when there were a lot of people who said they shouldn't have gone through with the draft this weekend. What do you think?
Yeah, and Roger Goodell forced it through. I mean, let's face it, it was his leadership that said, we're going to do this, and we don't care the general managers are complaining. They don't have enough time with the players. Their doctors couldn't see them. There were a million different excuses. And he plowed ahead with it. And not only did they plow ahead with it, I thought they took this sort of big corporate monster, mean NFL who always bullies their way through everything and sort of humanized the whole league. I mean, we saw everybody with their kids. We saw Roger with his M&Ms and, almost taking a nap by the end of the laid back on his couch like the rest of us were, I mean, all of us were kind of like,
exactly.
Okay, this has been great, but, we're a little bit tired at this point. But I thought that the NFL came off as more human during this process than that I can ever remember it being. And especially when you consider how desperate everybody was for anything sports related, for them to hit a home run on that day, I think is going to stick for a long time.
Yeah, Peter King in his column. Peter's column is going to take a few minutes to read, and it's totally worth it, folks. It's great. He said it might have been Goodell's finest moment as commissioner. Worth reading Peter's Football Morning in America, NBCSports.com. All right, let's just try to hit as many of these as we can. Jordan Love, the quarterback to the Packers. We talked about it a lot on the show on Friday. What's your reaction to that?
If I were Aaron Rodgers, I'd be really mad. And it has nothing to do with the fact that he might take his place or whatever the case. But right now, Aaron Rodgers is looking at, I've got one Super Bowl ring. I'm arguably one of the best players that's ever played in the game. And now here's my final 3 or 4 or 5 years, whatever he has, about some kind of a run. And yet, instead of getting additional help at wide receiver, at offensive line, at whatever you want to talk about, they go out and draft for the future. And not only draft for it, but they trade up to get Jordan Love, to be the backup, to be the guy you're expected to train and the guy you're expected to help. And so at the end of the day, I'm sure Aaron Rodgers is going to put on a public face that he's okay with all this. Maybe he won't. I mean, Aaron as well as I do. Maybe he'll just come out and be honest. But he has to be upset at this point. And the other part of it, Mike, is there's a good chance that the benefit of that rookie contract, that you love having quarterbacks on a rookie contract, pay them $5 million instead of $30 million, might expire by the time that it actually comes into play if Aaron plays another 5 years.
So 2 points. One, I've been thinking that all weekend. I think Aaron, knowing him, is going to find it to be a motivation switch. We may see the best Aaron Rodgers that we've seen this year. But to that point, Cris, I think different from when Rodgers was drafted, when Favre was there, the financial value of a first-round quarterback, you've got to pull the trigger on that fifth-year option, like you were alluding to, at some point with some knowledge of can the guy play. So I understand setting up the franchise down the line, but this feels like a more immediate NFL than ever before, and that's why I had the questions there. Now, Tua is different, with Miami jumping in there, kind of a long haul. And we'll ask Brian Flores about that when he joins us, but were you surprised that Tua went off the board at 5?
No, I actually had him there. And if you studied a little bit of all the negative reaction, I'm going to give my PFF guys credit for this. I did not think of this. But the negative rumors about Tua were all coming out of Miami Dolphin-based newspapers. So whatever it was, it's Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach. I can't
Right,
remember which ones exactly, right? But
right,
all the negative rumors
right.
started there. And so when you're thinking about, and then all the positive stuff about Justin Herbert, and here it comes. And I went back and watched a bunch of Justin Herbert, and I watched a bunch of Tua, and they were starting to say now, oh, yeah, that people are trying to trade up for Justin Herbert. And my brain went,
Right.
no, it's just not there. The gap was too big between those two players, in my estimation. And so when you heard all this noise, I just kept thinking, this is just a bluff. They are trying to keep the Chargers from jumping ahead of the Dolphins so that they don't have to expend any more of their capital to get up to where Detroit was or where the New York Giants were in order to have this thing happen. So it didn't surprise me at all. I put Tua at number 5 in the mock, but I also think you have to come away with Chris Greer and Brian Flores as one of the huge winners here, because not only did they get their guy, they didn't have to trade up any to get him.
And Chris, you're so right on that. Half the draft is the poker game of it. And when you go through the nuance and you talk to guys after the draft, and they talk about the moves that were made or the moves that were not made while on the clock, other trades. If Miami wanted 2 at 5, they put enough chum in the water to keep everybody else at bay and think they weren't going to. They did, and they end up with those 3 first-rounders. And if they hit on 2 of the 3, no matter what you think of the value of each pick, it's something that they can start to build going forward from their draft. Then there's New England with no quarterbacks, and I'm sitting here just a couple of minutes before the show, and I'm just looking at who they have, and they get Brian Lewerke, and a free agent out of Michigan State, and they're bringing all these guys in, and they like Stidham apparently. Do we really think Miami or New England's going to get to training camp, if it happens on time, without a veteran quarterback?
Are we tanking for Trevor already? I don't know. I'm already trying to do the calculations myself here. If I had to guess, I mean, and this was my guess before the draft, I actually thought that New England was going to trade for Andy Dalton during the draft as soon as Joe Burrow got picked by the Bengals.
Yeah.
Dalton, Cam Newton, you could make a case for, but it feels like Andy Dalton is the one guy that could slide right into Josh McDaniels' offense and be able to run that fairly effectively. Now, maybe they like Stidham. A little bit hard for me to be that reliant for the New England Patriots for replacing Tom Brady to come in there with the first year. I've seen him in practice. I've seen him throw the ball. He looks good out there. But that's 20 years of Tom Brady and the greatness that he brought to the table. And then you go through the draft process and you don't draft a quarterback. I mean, to me, that is a fairly bold statement. And if they had liked Jordan Love, they had the opportunity to take him there, which also thought was a bit of a statement on Jordan Love. So then when Green Bay traded up, I was like, oh boy, all this stuff,
Right.
it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me right here.
Chris, 2 other points here. Let me hit the trade market first, because Joe Staley's retirement, San Francisco's trade for Trent Williams, although not draft related, is a pretty significant piece, adding to a team that was yay close to winning the whole darn thing this past year.
Yeah, I think so. And Joe Staley apparently had let it be known a little bit in advance that he was not going to be available. So, but when you think about the Trent Williams deal, I mean, this guy's one of the great offensive linemen in all of football before he set out last season. Well, was he fading? And I think he's 32 years old, something like that. But it didn't force their hand. They were able to get John Kinlaw. They were able to get help in Brandon Ayuk at the back end of the first round to, again, fit that Deebo Samuel, sort of tough wide receiver, that they were looking for, and still stay within the realm of exactly who they were all about, because DeForest Buckner leaves for them. And their belief, their core philosophy in San Francisco, and they certainly have drafted to it, has been, we are going to make the best defensive line we can possibly make and build our entire football team around it. And then we're going to find tough guys at receiver, and they certainly have that as well.
We talked a couple of moments about Pro Football Focus and the stats and the analysis and all the other things. You mentioned the Packers earlier, and I want to get back to this point that I forgot. If you go back to the pre-draft recaps of all the teams, the number one need in New England was a quarterback. They didn't draft one. The number one need in Green Bay was a wide receiver. They didn't draft one. I'm interested to the teams that didn't fill those needs here in the draft, what the rest of the free agency market is going to look like, because there are still guys that are out there that usually get signed at some point here along the way. But that market is now in question with the season being in question. Not sure when we're going to start. So those real needs for teams, I don't know where they're exactly going to fill them between now and whenever the doors get open and we can get started with training camps.
Well, I think that's a really good point, Mike, and it may have something to do with the fact that the New England Patriots did not take a quarterback this year. When are they going to practice? And no matter, even if you trade up to take Joe Burrow, when are you going to get with this guy to be able to work with him? They might show up to training camp for all we know at the beginning of September and play the first games in the 1st of October. And so you probably would go with a player like Jared Stidham or a veteran or somebody that you could bring in like an Andy Dalton. So I think that the uncertainty of this season is certainly playing a factor in the draft and free agency.
I think next year we should go watch the draft with Cliff Kingsbury. And if he's at the Cardinals facility, that's fine. We'll just hang at his house and do a web show if they'd like.
Now, I'm just trying to think, who is it that you would rather have the day with? Jerry Jones and his yacht or Cliff Kingsbury in that Wolf of Wall Street pad of his? Which one are you going for?
I think Jerry's yacht. Because that thing's got to be special. It looked too good. It looked too perfect. And if you can quarantine and you have a yacht, when else would you use it? It's the perfect time. It looked pretty good. Hey, before we go, I just want to let you know, this is usually the week we get to see you. The decor on the set has changed because this is Kentucky Derby week. So we're missing the Derby this week. So the Derby hat
day of the whole
will be here all week.
I love
I know.
Now, this is a rumor. I heard NBC is doing a virtual Derby at some point, and they're going to replay a Derby, right? Tell me what's going on.
You're exactly right. On Saturday, we've got first Saturday in May. We're going to have 3 hours on NBC when the Derby would have been on. We are going to show American Pharoah winning the Derby on his way to the Triple Crown, and there'll be a virtual Kentucky Derby with all the Triple Crown winners. So we'll have odds, we'll have all that stuff. It'll be a lot of fun. So we're going to be part of that on Saturday. So I know you can get dressed up. Holly can wear that great dress that I'm sure she was going to wear, and the hat and the whole deal. And you guys can have mint juleps and watch us on Saturday.
I just want to bet. Can I still bet on a virtual Derby? I don't know.
The answer is yes. Stay tuned for more on that. All right, pal. I'll talk to you. Thanks, Chris. Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.